It is. There's a gavel. I can always. No, not usually, but I can. There you go. Bang the table. Okay. All right, I will call the December 9th, 2025 City Council meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting in person at City Hall or by pre-registering and joining through Zoom. All City Council meetings are broadcast live and can be accessed through the city website. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Lehman, would you lead us tonight, please?
I pledge allegiance to
the
flag
flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sammy, would you do roll call, please?
We have Mayor Bell.
Here.
Councillor Wells is present. Councillor Smith.
Here.
Councillor Bowman.
Present.
Councillor Engelbretson is absent. Councillor Myers.
Here.
Councillor Lehman.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First agenda item is mayor's conference or mayor's comments. First of all, I'm going to tell you I had cataract surgery yesterday. So if I'm not reading really as quickly as usual or responding as quickly as usual, there is a reason. But it's going great and I'm actually seeing quite well. I want to take a moment and say thank you to all of you who were involved in Christmas in Coburg. The light parade was fantastic. The lighting is fantastic. I know that a lot of this came from Main Street, but I also know that our public works staff was involved. Our police staff was involved. Everything went so smoothly and it was packed. I could not believe all of the people that were there. Maybe I just forget from year to year, but it was beautiful. Coburg looks beautiful. The guys are out picking up the leaves today and, everything just looks wonderful. So I just want to say thank you for everybody who was involved. In your red folder, is the information on the December update. That should be, I think that's in our red folder.
It's actually in your packets,
It's
Mayor.
actually in our packet. I apologize. The administrator's report is in the only item in our red packet. I have met with community members through October and November, and I will have more meetings with community members in terms of specifically in terms of the financial status of Coburg at this time and future needs. And that's salient because we are going to be talking tonight about going over the results of the revenue subcommittee. So I want you to know that I've had very positive response from those residents who have come, and I will continue meeting with them. If any counselors want to know specifically, I think you've gotten all of the information that I've been presenting has been presented to you previously and was in your packet. So that's really all I have to say. There is still a vacancy on the Planning Commission and the Park and Tree Commission. So if you know anybody that's looking to get involved in commissions or committees in Coburg, we have opportunities. So I would certainly welcome that. More input from others. Sammy, are there any proposed changes to the agenda?
Just this, no changes, Mayor. You guys do all have a copy of the city administration report that was also emailed to everyone. And that's it.
And on your desks, we also have the Council Revenue Subcommittee report for you to look at later.
That is also in the packet. I just
It was
made an
also in
extra
the
copy,
packet,
just
yeah.
to have handy out separate from the packet.
Yes, that's true. We put a lot in those packets and I hope everybody had the opportunity to get through those. Is there anyone signed up for public comment tonight?
There's not.
And the consent agenda are the minutes of November 12th City Council meeting. Items on the consent agenda may be removed for separate consideration by any council member upon request. Is there any such request? Hearing none, I'm going to take that as a no. I will consider a motion and a second at this time.
Mayor Bell, I
Yes.
move to approve the minutes for the November city council meeting as well as the November work session.
Okay.
That, Mayor, that's not going to work.
Oh, do you need the dates? I'm sorry.
We didn't have a work session in November,
Oh, sorry.
and it's the November 12th minutes that we're looking for a motion.
Yes, I will redo that.
Okay, thank you.
I move to approve the November 12th city council minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Counselor Bowman and a second by Counselor Lehman. Do we have any opposed or abstaining? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Counselor Wells, did I get an okay, thank you. Okay. We do have a special guest tonight, and that is, and I'm sorry, and Ms. Winner is going to introduce our guest. This is someone from the U of O, real world class, and to talk to us about the Coburg Loop.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. It is truly my pleasure to introduce to you our student consultant team from the University of Oregon's Real World Lane County class. I have been working with the team over the past 10 weeks, and I will let them present on the magnificent hard work that they have done. And Annika will share briefly about the purpose of the class itself. But I just wanted to commend them ahead of time for their fantastic work and great energy coming into this project.
Good. Well, we look forward to hearing all about it.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Bell and counselors. My name's Aniko and I work at University of Oregon in the School of Planning, Public Policy and Management. And we offer a class called Real World Lane County. And we were here presenting to you actually, I think in March. The team did community survey work. And Megan invited us back to do another project. So this team has been working on the loop path. So they start in the beginning of the term and they are formed into teams and given their project, and then they work on that project over the course of 10 weeks. And now we're here to hear the culmination of that work. So we're missing one team member tonight who couldn't make it, but Asia and Chloe are gonna do a great job of sharing about what they've learned, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end.
Great.
Thank you so much. I'll invite them up.
And see, if you just keep doing a good job, we'll keep inviting you back. Let the record show that Counselor Engebretson is here also.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can go ahead and start when you're ready.
My name is Chloe Cruz. I'm Asia Lieberman, and we are the Coburg Loop Path team. Need our slides. Okay.
What year in school are you?
I'm a third year. I'm a senior. Yes, we're both studying public policy, urban planning, and nonprofit management.
What are you gonna do with that?
I want to be an urban designer. I'm not too sure yet.
Got the job application on the way out.
Yeah, yes, I definitely will. Thank you. You want to use it yourself? Okay, so we're just gonna do a brief overview of what we're gonna cover today. So we're gonna start by reviewing the 2009 implementation plan of the Coburg Loop Path and cover some important details from that. And we're also gonna discuss our key takeaways and key findings within the project assessment and the current conditions of the Loop Path. And we're also gonna be discussing some of our team's recommendations and recommendations for next steps for the future UO spring team. Right. So the 2009 plan outlined the development and planning for the Coburg Loop Path. And the plan detailed the phases of construction for the path and the aim to capitalize on new development and the expansion of the urban growth boundary. The path was initially intended to be multimodal, provide recreation for users, access to nature, and increase connectivity throughout Coburg. And since the initial 2009 plan, many segments of the path have been constructed, but there haven't been any updated reports, assessments, or maps. And that's why we're here. So our team coordinated with the Coburg City staff to document and analyze the path conditions, provide an updated map of the loop path, and also develop recommendations for next steps to improve the loop path. And we worked with Megan Winter, the planning director here at Coburg. And for our methodology, we collected both qualitative and quantitative data. So our qualitative data consisted of surveys and interviews with city staff, and our quantitative data consisted of site visits and photo documentations that contributed to our path segment analysis. Okay, moving on to key takeaways. So as you can see, Chloe created this amazing map of the current loop path. So 4 out of the 8 identified segments in the 2009 plan were completed. However, in total, seven path segments have been built because 3 segments were built that were not mentioned in the 2009 plan. I'll let you guys take a moment to look at the map. You guys will also receive our report, which has this map in it. So our first key takeaway was limited wayfinding. We consider wayfinding as mileage markers, informational signage, explaining the theme of the path name signage, loop path signs, which can be seen on the top right corner. I don't know, have any of you guys seen those signs around Coburg? Okay.
There's a few, yep.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
And path maps. So 5 out of the 7 segments have some type of wayfinding signage, but overall there's limited and inconsistent wayfinding. Most of the wayfinding is concentrated on the on-street connectors, which can be seen right here, these black dotted lines. And the signs there are not very visible. They are small and they blend in with the background. So after talking to our 3 interviewees, which are all Coburg City staff, they explained that many community members are not aware that they are walking on the Coburg Loop Path when they are. And this is reflective of the broader issue that many people are not aware of the loop path. So Booth Kelly, as labeled Mill Slough East on the map, was the only segment with a path name sign, which is also shown on the screen. In comparison to other segments, the Sarah Lane connector, also shown on the map, has great signage and is the only segment with mileage markers and bike signs. Moving on to the next key takeaway of uneven distribution of amenities. So this table shows the amenities present on the 6 different path segments. We do not have the on-street segment included as it does not have any amenities. So the majority of paths have limited amenities. Overall, there is limited place for rest and recreation. This is shown in the lack of benches on most of the path segments. And in Booth Kelly Trail, they have, I don't know if any of you all have noticed this, but there are some bike ramps and tree houses built that younger kids have built, and this is reflective of the need for more recreation for different age groups in Coburg, as we learned from our interviewees that a lot of kids leave to Eugene or Springfield for their outside of school activities. And there are no amenities on Roberts Road, and we have a picture of Roberts Road. It's pretty sparse. It's not inviting. I don't think anyone would know that it's part of the loop path. So the amenities are concentrated on Sarah Lane Connector, Booth Kelly Trail, and Industrial Way. Amenities are very important to engage people in using the loop path. Moving on to the last key takeaway, the loop is not a complete loop. It lacks connectivity partly because there is no community loop path map that residents can reference when walking around, and also because there is limited wayfinding. So it is difficult to assess where path segments start and end due to poor marking of on-street segments and coordination with off-street segments. And lastly, there are very few segments in southern Coburg as seen on the map. In the 2009 plan, there were path alignments in southern Coburg, but these were never started. Moving on to recommendations. So this is the recommendations map that Chloe created, and on the map you can find general wayfinding signage and theme signage. There are also interactive amenities listed, and we did not include this on the map, but another one of our recommendations is to complete this loop. So our first recommendation is to implement wayfinding. So this includes loop path signage such as path name signs, as the previous Booth Kelly picture showed, and the circular signs on the on-street segments indicating that someone is on the loop path. We also recommend implementing mileage markers saying how far someone is from the next segment so they can navigate this path. Also, we recommend implementing informative signs that align with the theme of the path. We did not touch on this very much, but in the 2009 plan, every path segment was assigned a theme. So Booth Kelly was assigned the theme of Coburg history because it is right next to the historic mill pond. And Industrial Way was assigned the theme of industry for obvious reasons. And we recommend that Coburg hones or exemplifies the aspects of all the paths by including informative signs. And you can see Booth Kelly's informative sign. Lastly, we recommend creating a updated map of the Coburg Loop path that the community can use. This could be placed on the loop path and also in newsletters online so people can access it both ways. And Chloe will talk about this community map in next steps. Our last recommendation is to implement more amenities. We specifically recommend implementing interactive amenities like exercise equipment, which would be very useful or would contribute very positively to the young community on places like Booth Kelly, where they already like to hang out. And overall, it needs more general amenities such as benches, picnic tables, where people of all ages can gather. The other one was not our last recommendation. This is our last recommendation. We recommend that Coburg create a complete loop. So as you can see, there are no segments in Southern Coburg. So we recommend that the southern segments be built, and these segments are listed in the 2009 plan. Passing it on to Chloe.
Great. So the spring team, working with Real World Lane County, will additionally research the potential for expanding the loop path, and they will also be assessing the feasibility of path expansions and related funding and development strategies. These students will continue to be involved in this project, and the spring term class will be building on our foundation of work, and they're going to be focusing more on community engagement and community outreach to determine the community's sentiments and assessment of the loop. And as Asia was talking about earlier, we have an example of the map, which was provided by Tracy Pugh and created by Terry Dawson, of this type of conceptual illustrated map. So we would recommend that the city of Coburg develop this type of style of map to increase community awareness of the path. And this map would include the loop path and points of interest and areas for recreation and community services. To conclude, the Coburg Loop Path is well maintained. It's used often by the community, and it's largely in line with the path's original goals. And the future Real World Lane County team will be building on this work and focusing on community engagement to, keep improving the loop path.
Thank you so much, everyone. And do you have any questions?
Counselors?
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, who did you interview? And secondly, did you speak to any residents or gather any data from residents or other stakeholders?
Yes, great question. So we talked to Tracy Pugh, Megan Winner, and Adam Hanks. And the next team will be focusing more on the community engagement. They might do a survey and more interviews with residents.
Did you have another question, Counselor Bowman?
No, that was 2 questions wrapped into one. I guess.
All right. Counselors, any other questions?
I do.
Oh, Counselor
Do
Raymond.
you have copies of that map?
Yes, we will send you a report which has all 3 maps.
We'll put that in a future council packet, so it's on record. No, we just wanted to get the presentation done within their term. And then we'll also obviously be giving that to the Park and Tree Committee. We've talked with them about this project as it started. So a great kind of jumping off spot for Park and Tree to revisit the loop path. And, as those conclusions stated, I think, it's well on its way to what was originally envisioned. It just needs, it's due for a relook and planning next steps. And obviously funding, as they mentioned in the final pieces, is a massively critical component to making that expansion happen. But this is a great start for Park and Tree and staff and ultimately council to look at the next 5 to 10 years of what the loop path development will be.
And we have here our 3 maps. So the 2009 implementation map, just reformatted in the style of our other maps, the current conditions map, and then our recommendations map. So we used these today in our showcase and wanted to bring them so you guys can see.
Good. Yes.
I just have a comment.
Yes.
It's really nice to have a fresh set of eyes on what we see or don't see. And I think that this will be really valuable going forward for Park and Tree Committee, especially to look at the information you've given and help prioritize some of the improvements. It's all kind of tied up in a nice little bundle, which we don't always see because we live here. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
all the hard work, and we're looking forward to more information in the spring.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Good suggestions and lots of food for thought. And has everybody been out to the newest part of the loop path? It's absolutely gorgeous.
I highlighted that one was the first item in the city administration report.
Oh.
It just, you stole the thunder and they did already, which was great, the great tie-in. The final punch list, was done by the contractors, Monday. So it's freshly done. We have, a little bit of maintenance work at the interface between the end of the path and Trails End, that Brian and I and the team, well, Brian and the team, will be working on.
There.
Yeah, the I is kind of floating there. It's mostly Brian and team. Just as some cleanup in the spring to really, now that the path really goes right to Trails End, it gets a little bit of vegetation refacing and then some other things that we'll talk about with Park and Tree to really integrate that. But yeah, the extension is really nicely done. It connects all of that through from Sarah Lane, going north, the whole thing.
And it's so safe. I walked out there last week, I guess, and cars were whizzing by on North Industrial, trucks, cars, and I was safely over on a nice loop path, and it was great. And the guys were still out, the contractors were still out spreading the seed, and bark dust was there to improve the aesthetics, really. But it's a beautiful path. It is very nice. I can't wait to bike on it, but walking was certainly nice.
I noted it in the CA report, but just wanted to call out an additional shout out. This project was state and federal funding, so it had to be done by a certified agency, which we're not. So the city of Eugene managed that project. So a shout out. I sent some thank yous along this week to Sean Kavinsky, was the primary staff from the city of Eugene Engineering that did the project design and manage the project. So really awesome for us to have the city step in and help us utilize those state and federal funds that we otherwise, without a certified agency partner, even if we're awarded those funds, we can't do anything with them. So that really is critical to activating those funds for public works projects like that. So shout out to there's only 3 or 4 certified agencies and they're always super busy. So it's really, really appreciated when they're able to fit in a project of ours in their busy schedules as well.
And this was a long time in coming. I
Yeah.
mean, there were lots of sort of design changes where, we weren't sure how far the money would go in present times. But it really looks fantastic. I'm so pleased.
Just for context, 1.3 million. It's about an 11% city match, but that's what those projects are, with utility relocations, irrigation, some retaining walls, a lot of concrete flat work. But in addition to that, 1.3 was a full repaving of the large section of North Industrial. So we have the pedestrian loop path benefit, but the commercial industrial partners that we have out there that operate also got a new road surface, and that was pretty necessary as well. So that 1.3 is combined. It's not just the path, but combined project.
It is great. I would highly, and I think that will make Trails End Park, the wetland area, be a lot more accessible. I mean, a lot of people use it and go out and take fantastic photos. And I think that will just increase through the years. It's just so much easier to get to. Well, thank you. And thank you for the Real World U of O. Okay, our next item on the agenda is ordinances and resolutions. We do have a resolution request and a staff report by Mr. Hanks on the 2026 employee handbook. I spent a lot of time reading this over, and I will be honest and tell you that I found very few questions or changes. If other counselors have questions, they will be directed to Mr. Hanks. But if you have comments, I will encourage you to direct them to us as counselors. That's where those comments should go. The changes made reflect the suggestions by our insurance agency that are based on Oregon employment law. And so I think most of what you see in here are either those suggestions or administrative cleanup. And this has been discussed at the leadership team level, and I think all questions have been addressed and answered. So, Mr. Hanks, with all that preamble, I will turn that over to you.
Thank you. Yes, that you've queued it up well, Mayor. Thank you. This item is the goal that we have, and it's in the council framework that is reviewed at the retreat and approved each year. Part of the human resources section of our strategies in the framework is regular review and updates of the employee handbook. As the mayor said, this is our basically our employment guide with between the city and its employees. We don't have any unions, so this is the functional working legal document. I'll stick pretty tight to the staff report just to make sure we cover it efficiently. But the goal is to bring this every winter, in the December, January timeframe, and there are inevitably updates that CIS, our insurance, recommends. We have an opportunity at no cost to have them review our handbook every year. At least every other year, there's usually significant state legislation that can change wording on a lot of different topics, and I'll go over a few of those here. And as well as practical things that, we don't have time sheets anymore. We don't have a salmon colored sheet for vacation requests. That's all converted to our software. So there's some of those, little things about how procedurally things evolve with different technology and different processes. So this is intended, as the mayor said, to be, fairly administrative, a lot of legal change. There is very little, nearly nothing in the way of, there is no compensation changes. There's nothing material in a budget implications. There's some slight consistency changes about how things were done in practice versus what the wording was on just some timing of a few things. And we were able to kind of work through that as a team and say, okay, what did this say versus some things didn't change. And that brought up as much questions as the things that did change, like actually doing them the way that the book says, and how we navigate that. So the bullet points that I'll go through, I noted down, I had a conversation with Councilor Lehman about this prior, and there's two ways I'll go through it, but I can go through each bullet and kind of talk about which ones were primarily driven by CIS, our insurance, and which ones were more of the administrative work that I led with some input from the team. Another way to kind of track that in the track changes document is the red. If you have the color copies, the red strikeouts is the CIS, and the blue is me or staff. So if you're interested, I can go through either the bullets, or we can go through the actual track changes. Whatever's the preference of council to, if there's any particular things that caught your eye, we can hit them randomly as well. I'm open to however you want to proceed through the document.
Council, what would you have a preference into which way we proceed?
I would just go by
You have a question?
I would just go by any specific items as opposed to globally.
Okay.
So do you want to go down, if I'm understanding correctly, go down the bullet points?
No, I just have questions on page 47 and 50.
You have specific questions, okay? Okay, well, then I guess we'll just answer
Okay.
those questions. That
Okay.
seems to be the direction of council. Counselor Smith, why don't you go ahead and start?
So thanks for the clarification as to what is CIS and what is staff, but I did have a question on page 50 of the packet. Under the PERS retirement system, it struck out that we would consider allowing PERS eligible employees to retire within the city, and then rehire, does that mean we can no longer allow employees to retire and then rehire them back with the city? Or is that just verbiage that?
It's the opposite. It's the state changed the law about 4 years ago on an interim basis. There used to be the whole 1039 when an employee would retire, getting PERS, you could only work back half a year. So 1039 is 1 hour short of half of the total hours in a year. So they were termed 1039 employees, so a work back. That was eliminated last legislative session. So what this became unnecessary language. So yes, we can and do hire back. And actually, that has some employment law requirements where you can't discriminate and say if you're a PERS retiree, you can't work. That there's some legal things. So that was stricken for a number of reasons. It opens it. It doesn't close it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Question. Counselor Lehman, you had
Yeah.
specific questions.
That was the same question I had, but also on page 47, the employee benefits. Coburg pays 95% of the cost of elected coverage for its regular full-time employees. Employees are required to pay 5% of their elected coverage. Part-time employees, 20 hours or less, are not eligible for health insurance benefits. And so Adam and I talked a little bit about why that language was deleted.
Yeah, you want me to go ahead and comment on our conversation? Yeah, I appreciate that. That's one that I had in my notes for the follow-up before you get to any sort of emotion. I didn't finish, I didn't close the loop on this one. So I think it's appropriate that it's not in here, that instead that's done with our class and compensation resolution that's done separately from this as well, because that is part of more of the compensation side. And that, is a policy that can be changed by council from year to year. There's no intention right now that be changed or altered. So striking it here and waiting until we typically do the comp and class resolution in May or June, I think probably it's best to just unstrike it, leave it here. And then when we get to that conversation in June, we can present that included with the classification salary schedule, and council can decide then whether they want it to be in that or they want to retain it here. So if that's amenable, I think after the discussion, I think I got halfway to where I think it belongs, but it leaves it in limbo. But there wasn't any intention to change that ratio at all at this time. That's a significant council conversation that is more policy. So that one, I just didn't think about the time lag of finishing the loop on where it would land if it's not here. That was at least my thought process.
And
Yes.
I just had a person ask me yesterday about employees working from home, which I wasn't aware of if that's what we are doing. But if we are, should that have some kind of language in our employee handbook?
There is, yes. So it used to be the category in here was called telecommuting, which is a very old term, and a dated term.
Which page is that on?
Let's see. So some of it is stricken just because of the really the policy part didn't change. It was more of updating the language. There's some flex, yeah. Flex time was changed to alternative work schedules. That was an outdated, flex is kind of an outdated term. So page 32 of the packet, I think, yes, telecommuting is now remote work. So just updating that terminology, the procedure and policy for that remains the same, which there's a form and there's an approval of the department head and city administrator for kind of regular ongoing remote. There are some ad hoc remote that we do more on a verbal, that somebody may work from home. I do that occasionally. So my standpoint is that it's a work product, thing, and it depends on your position. It depends on what you're doing and how you can accomplish that. So remote work is permitted, and any extended remote work or an agreement of, say, in a lot of organizations, if you're working in office 3 days and remote 2, there's a formal agreement, and then it spells it out how any of the details work on that. We don't have any of those agreements in place right now. Nobody's working on a regular basis remote. We do ad hoc remote work based on different factors. But it is a, like I say, pretty ad hoc basis. But that section was in there. The language change. Yeah, it just requires with a city provided remote work agreement form, which we already have, so that no substantive policy change, just updating what we call, it's not telecommuting, it's remote work.
That answer your question, Counselor Lyman? Are there any other specific questions in going through this? Oh. Counselor Wells, did you have any questions? No? Okay.
Good, yeah.
All right. I can see your head and I appreciate that.
Can use his nonverbal skills here.
That's
yeah.
right. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I will consider a motion to approve this with the change suggested by Mr. Hanks.
Yeah, I think the wording would be, if you want to use that second motion with the following adopting the 2026 City of Coburg Employee Handbook, removing the strikeout on page, Counselor Lehman, maybe help me, what was that page number?
47, I think.
Yeah. Removing it's the only strikeout, so removing the strikeout language on page 47. That, if that's desired.
Page 30 of the employee handbook or page 47?
Either, oh, you're right, either one probably.
Okay.
So when
Sammy,
you say you're removing the strikeout language, are you meaning?
So that language would be retained.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Would not be omitted
Right.
from the handbook.
yeah, remove the strikeout only.
I move to approve resolution 2025-18, a resolution adopting the 2026 Coburg Employee Policy Manual with the following suggested alteration, retaining the language on page 47 of the Employee Handbook, page 30 of the packet.
Are those correct pages?
Say that, I think it was the opposite.
I think
Oh,
so.
Opposite.
Sorry,
Parks reserved.
sorry, I don't need to redo that, do I?
Page 33 of the handbook,
And
perhaps,
47 of the packet.
and 47 of the
Yeah.
packet.
It's 30, isn't it? Page 30 of
Is
the
it
handbook?
Page 30.
Page 30 of the handbook.
Thank you.
Page,
We're
page,
removing the strikeout. We're removing the strikeout. We're retaining the language as currently,
is currently included.
that's right, included. That's an excellent term.
I second.
So we have a motion by Counselor Bowman and a second by Counselor Lehman to adopt resolution 2025-18, a resolution adopting the employee handbook with the following alterations: to remove the strikeout or retain the language on page 30 of the employee handbook, page 47 of the packet. Any discussion on that? Any further discussion? Counselor Bowman?
The only thing I want to say is I commend Adam for working to make a very tight, efficient, thorough handbook that is relatively digestible as these things go. And I trust the city staff will be well guided by it, because I've seen a lot that are very much more clunky than this. So it's good to see it being efficient and tight and thorough, but allowing the employees to do their job to the best of their ability and trusting them to do their job. And I recommend its adoption.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
just
Councilor
another
Layman?
observation. In my conversation with Adam, I'm just reminded that in city government that we have at-will employees and non-collective bargaining.
Mhm.
My previous experience has always been that you have collective bargaining and unions that look at documents like this and negotiate them. And yet ours is more administrative and directed from the administration for the employees with input with the staff leadership team. So that was just a reminder to me of the difference of those two positions.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, debate? Hearing none, I will entertain a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Hearing none, the motion passes 6-0. Thank you very, very much. Next, we have the council action items, which is really a discussion and an opportunity for us to guide staff in we need further information. And this is on the revenue subcommittee report and recommendation. So no action is required tonight. I don't know if you've all had an opportunity. It was in the packet and it is in paper form on at our seats.
Let me share.
I will tell you that having been on this committee with Counselor Smith and Counselor Engelbretson, Adam guided us well in terms of short-term and long-term financial implications for the city of Coburg. We've brought some recommendations to council previously. And so we're bringing this last one, and this is for those of you that have read it, we will be looking at utility rates, and we're looking at general fund revenue and then longer range revenue options. Those are not on the table at this point, the longer range ones, but we are making a recommendation for a public safety fee. And now shall I turn that over to you, Counselor, or Counselor, Mr. Hanks?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And I think there's plenty of room for the subcommittee to kind of give some context of the dialogue that happened and ultimately the recommendation, because it is a recommendation from that subcommittee. I'll give a little kind of reset the background. The memo that forms the document of the recommendation does step through some of the history of the subcommittee, and it's wild that it was July 9th of 24. So, we adopted the budget in June of last year for the fiscal 26 budget, the one that we're in. And really immediately after that, that was in June. So immediately after that, there was part of that budget adoption was the continued, kind of staff, city administrator beating of the drum that, hey, the general fund particularly, all funds have some challenges. The general fund particularly has some needs that can't wait, that we have to address, or we're going to have some real problems. So that was the impetus to create. We talked about an ad hoc committee, a internal subcommittee, or different ways to go about attacking this issue. What was selected in July, council confirmed the mayor's intention to create this revenue options subcommittee, and the charge was in the memo as well. The charge was in 3 parts, and because there was certain timing that we wanted to hit. The first was a little more straightforward, but it also needed to be done. There was a calendarizing to do it, and it was on utility rates. So that was phase 1, and the council heard the recommendations, formally a similar memo from the subcommittee on those recommendations, implemented utility rates, water, sewer. I call the TUF a utility. It's technically legally not the same as a utility rate, but it's the streets is a quasi utility. So I kind of put it in that bucket, even though you can put an asterisk next to it technically. Then the next step was the general fund, immediate general fund assistance, financial assistance. And that ended up spurring the second set of recommendations. So phase two, which resulted in the park and open space fee that also was presented to the Park and Tree Committee, which ended up being adopted, $5 fee after a lot of discussion about what is the right dollar amount, really from a parks maintenance, how to ensure that that service level is able to remain. That was done in July. And then the last set, which is the presentation here, phase three, were longer range revenue options. And as the mayor said, we talked about a variety of, and that was really focused on general fund. I know we also have some long range items in like a diesel tax, some other things that aren't necessarily general fund, but as we've talked about, it's several different ways that we've sliced and diced this. The general fund is our immediate issue. So the attention was put to the general fund. Not to say that the diesel tax and our other funds are unimportant to have revenue conversations. This one was more dire and more direct and more immediate. So that was set aside, and we can talk about that more in a bit. But we talked about all of those initially, but then the focus really is quickly on the general fund. And the set of recommendations, many of them are summarizations and kind of consolidation of other conversations that we've already had at council that just got reiterated and endorsed by the committee that they're important. The land use fees, much smaller revenue potential. Land use fees, the building permit fees, we're already in motion on some of those. You'll see those coming back. Those don't have quite at all the revenue implications to solve the gap, but they're nonetheless important, as well as auditing our franchise fees just to make sure that the existing revenues that we have on the books are being administered and collected appropriately. So a lot of those were part of the outside of the conversation. The meat of the conversation, and you can see that in the minutes, which are included, the last two sets of meeting minutes, as well as this memo, which really encapsulates the final meeting of the set of three, was public safety fee, a similar fee to the park and open space fee in structure, but more defined and dedicated to public safety, which we discussed and defined as police services, municipal court, and code enforcement. All three services reside 100% in the general fund. So looking at a public safety support fee to help fund and sustain those services, or an operating levy, and looking at the pros and cons, really those are most cities have those two fees as they're weighing out what they do. Some cities in our region use an operating levy, not as many. More in our region and throughout the state use a public, they call it some version of a public safety fee. Some just call it a police fee, some call it, there's a variety of names, but it is a fee on a utility bill or an operating levy, and they have different pros and cons. And we've talked about them here a little bit, and we talked about them more in depth at the subcommittee level. So that's really kind of how we got here. And I did add in the staff report, it isn't just the current administrator that has put that the general fund issues in writing. That's in prior budget messages. I've had two budget messages that have reiterated that fairly strongly, and it was also with Ann, the prior administrator, also had that in her at least one, and I think the last two.
I think it's been about 5 years.
Is
that
probably
we've been
discussions even
talking about
before
this.
formally
Yeah.
putting those in budget messages. And when they make the budget message, from an administrator standpoint, that means they're significant. You talk about them before then, and you say, hey, we got some concerns brewing, we got some things that aren't trending the right way. But when it makes it into a formal comment in a budget message, if you look at anybody's budgets, around the state and read budget messages, if it's in there, that's significant. Whatever's in there, pro and con, that means we need to address it. And I'm really excited that council jumped on it, created the subcommittee. We had some great meetings on all three phases. I think we had a total of 9 meetings overall. A lot of good discussion, debate, understanding of the mechanics of how the general fund especially functions, which is also on page 2 of this memo, trying to outline that, yes, we balance because we legally have to balance, but what are we missing? You know, what is not happening that needs to happen? And then how do we go about addressing that? And, you know, the challenge is in the general fund, especially the other funds, you know, we have different legal requirements, and the mayor included that in the December community newsletter update, that we're mandated by state law in our water and wastewater to set rates that cover our costs, because that's a requirement. It operates as its own business, each of them, and the rates are the predominant 90% plus of how we fund those. And that's just a math equation to come up with what rates we have to charge. The general fund's a different beast. It has a lot of different revenue streams. Those revenue streams are constrained. We don't have, in most cases, much control over them, especially property tax. We've talked about that, you know, ad nauseum, and that just because that's been ad nauseum probably doesn't mean it'll stop. We'll still talk about that. The challenges, Measure 5, Measure 50, and the mayor in her meetings, the sip and chats, I think that's been a discussion point, because it's, even after all these decades, it's still not well understood about the constraints that put on. And I would just add, before we dig into the actual meat of the recommendations, is, you know, Google any city in Oregon, especially. You can go beyond, but I think the apples and apples are really Oregon, because of Measure 50 and how we're reliant on. We don't have sales tax, we have property tax, we have state income tax. So there aren't many tools. So it is really, you know, from my standpoint, at while we're needing to address it, as usual with rates, with anything else, there are some that are worse off than us, and there are some that are better off than us at this moment in time. What we're really looking at, and I think what I liked about this process, from the council creating it and from the subcommittee working through it, is we know that our time is now to address it before it gets so dire that the solutions are super draconian and either on the expense reduction or a large hit of revenue need. This is still significant, what we'll talk about, there's no doubt. But the longer we go, the fewer options we have to address it. So I'm really excited that we're at the spot we're at. I know it's going to be a tough winter of discussions of this. We've set up, the look ahead is in the city administration report. So we have 3 slots scheduled for this. And I also, in the staff report, outlined bullets of on their next steps tonight. January meeting, a more full discussion after the rest of council that isn't on the subcommittee gets to absorb this, hear from the subcommittee. We'll have another round of discussions with a little more, I'd love direction to staff in a general sense tonight, but that's okay if we don't get in depth, because it's fresh to some of you. But January is really for some significant staff direction. So when we come back in March, if we are coming back to create the fee, it's an ordinance, first and second reading, it's a resolution, there's steps to it that we bring forward, exactly what council is wanting to see accomplished, whatever that would be. So this is really, you're looking at the dates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dates that are listed in the next steps. So it's now till likely, you know, whatever we choose, implementation either at hopefully the very latest July 1. And I'd add that you know, the reason we're doing December, January, February is March is when, you know, staff and we create the budget. And, you know, if we have inklings of this revenue not being a preferred choice for council and the community, then the budget that we prepare is different than if it looks like this is supported and there is some additional revenue. And that's not any sort of a threat at all. It's just again, it's just the math of the general fund that we'd have to create a budget that has some different components to it. So the time is I hope perfectly timed. The subcommittee did did their work. We squeezed in several meetings in October and in November to be able to make this timeline. And I appreciated everybody's flexibility to make sure we did meet this timeline of getting this in front of the full council in December. So hopefully there's adequate time both for your discussion, your direction, and information. As one of the recommendations that was talked about quite a bit at the subcommittee is also ensuring that we get information out to the public in between, a strong direction, whatever that may be, from council to the time council makes a decision. So it may not be we'll see what we can accomplish in terms of the type of outreach and engagement we do. But at the very least, the set of recommendations that subcommittee said that needs to occur in some shape or form, that the public understands what we have. And, the mayor's already started an element of that with the sip and chats, and there's many means that we can employ ourselves as staff, you all individually, to try and get the word out and get feedback for you to be able to make challenging decisions that you have to make. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any technical questions. I guess before maybe turning it over, the concerns really are twofold. It's the fundamental piece is this structural imbalances, and that you can call it a structural deficit, a structural imbalance. Different cities call it different things, but in practical terms, the challenge that most cities are facing, and we've talked about it before, is revenues climb at a much slower rate than expenses in the general fund. We're limited to about 3 to 5% revenue increase a year in the general fund, and our expenses historically, and we're not an anomaly, are 10, 12 to 15%, depending upon the year and how much capital. There's a little bit of variation, but that delta, the difference between the growth of revenue and the growth of expenses, that line, that chunk, that triangle in between, as you look years out, is the primary thing that's driving this conversation. There are other things, and that's what the bullets on page 3. There are other things that also drive this conversation. Future Parks Capital, that's general fund. Sometimes that can be addressed with grants. It just means that you have to wait for grants. That's sometimes a challenge when we're wanting to see progress in our park system. City Hall improvements, the clock just ticks on some required improvements that we have to make to this building. Police fleet replacement, Chief Larson and I are strategizing with that now. I think we have some potential smart ways to move forward. None of them are free. Spoiler alert. They're smart. And Chief's working on that with some regional work. There's a great regional conversation to be had in policing that Larry and I are working on, that Larry's taken the lead. That's showing some good signs that when we get far enough along, I don't want to jinx anything, we get far enough along, we are looking at cost containment. It's not cost savings, it's cost containment relative to the expense side of the equation, especially in police, because of its large chunk of the budget that of the general fund it takes up. So there are really good things happening there. And then we've talked about, just fund balance, having a fund balance that's too low to meet our debt obligations, too low for our credit rating with the recent reduction that we received on S&P Global. And we have some technology replacements, both in police and in other general fund areas that at a certain point become required, not optional. And then so I hit the balance there. Yeah. Then the final one is the one I started with, actually, which is the huge, that structural imbalance. All told, these are estimates, all told, a perfect thing of winning the city local government lottery would be an infusion of about $350,000 a year to be able to smartly and properly provide the services that we have, and put a check mark next to all of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet points that are on there. That isn't realistic, clearly, but it's something that we need to be setting out there to march towards over time. And again, there are more ways to skin that than just absolute revenue stream creation. But I am confident in now 2+ years here that, and it's the same case in most cities in Oregon, the existing service levels can't happen with some level of revenue. So that cues up the conversation of what level of revenue, how much, how fast, is the council willing and understanding the community, can and should take on for the services that the city provides. And so I'll quiet down there and maybe turn it over to the subcommittee. And I'm glad to answer any questions or fill in any gaps in the conversation.
I'd just like to remind all of us and any community members that are online or will listen to this afterwards, that there are 241 cities in Oregon. 50% of those cities by League of Oregon Cities survey are either experiencing budget deficits or budget constraints. This is not a Coburg issue. The legislature has committed to forming a subcommittee to study the problem that is related to Measure 5, which came into effect in 1990, and Measure 50 that came into effect in 1997. They have committed to study. That will take years before there is any kind of solution. But this is not a Coburg issue. We look at Springfield with a budget deficit. We look at Eugene with a budget deficit. We look at Lane County. We look at Salem. We look at Portland. These are multi-million-dollar deficits that all of these county municipalities and county organizations are dealing with. This is not fiscal mismanagement. It is simply, as Adam put, it is an equation. Our revenues are flat at 3 to 5% a year, growing slowly. Our costs have escalated exponentially. We all know that. We know that personally, and we know that as a city. And I don't like that. I don't like that any better than anybody else in this room. But it is a reality, and it is a reality that we have to face if we're going to continue offering the levels of service. This is not a service increase. This is to maintain services. We have to make some hard decisions. We have to be able to communicate those to our community members. And I will do my best in getting out there and doing sip and chats and having informal conversations. I will tell you that in the conversations that I have had very supportive community members saying, we understand. We don't want to see a decrease in service on any level. And we understand that we'll have to make some hard decisions. So I'll turn that over to my other committee members and for council for questions.
Yeah, I think Adam and the mayor have kind of summarized it well. You can't really argue with increasing your revenue at 3 to 5% per year and having costs increase at a much faster pace. I don't see in our budget or in our expenditures that we are there's much wiggle room there either. I mean, that's the first place everyone goes, whether it's a business or a nonprofit or government, before trying to talk about, well, in a business, you're going to be talking about revenue. Absolutely. You're going to be saying, how can we increase our revenue? Absolutely. But with a nonprofit or government, naturally, people don't want to do that first. They want to look at the expenses. And I think we've done that. I think that we're operating on a pretty shoestring budget. there's a lot of things, as Adam pointed out in these bullets, that we need to do that we haven't budgeted because we don't have the money, but they are needed. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that didn't make this bullet list that there, it seems like there's a lot more in my mind than just what's on the piece of paper here, in addition to, like, for example, I will continue to say we still need work on our development code and our transportation system plan, tying those together so that as we grow and bring on more new neighborhoods into town, that make sense in the town, and that it's not a big hassle every time there's going to be a new neighborhood. So unfortunately, that's where we're at. I think we have to, and this has been a problem, as Adam also said. I've seen it too, living here for 20 years or more, that it's been an elephant in the room for many years. I think at least a decade. I don't think it's just been the 5 years since it showed up in the administrative budget reports. I think we've known it's been going to be coming. We've just been able to kind of skate by or get by not doing everything that we need to do. And I just think the time has come at a state level and around the state and even in other states in the country that we have to do something about it. We can't just continue on this way. As you can see in the financial statements, even at the back of the packet, we can't continue like this. We have negative, we're using money that we had from prior years, essentially. That's a simplistic way to put it, but we have a fund balance that we're drawing down on. We are spending in a deficit position in the last couple of years, so we can't keep doing that. But we do have to do something differently. And personally, I don't want to see I would like to see our public safety department remain in Coburg. I think it's a really real benefit to Coburg. We are right on I-5. We have all kinds of traffic coming all the way from Mexico to Canada on I-5. I think if we talked in the subcommittee about the idea of contracting with a sheriff as a last resort, and found out that would probably cost more money than having our own police department and having drastically less service, obviously, to the community if we did something like that. So just a few more comments to sort of support why we've recommended what we have. Thank you.
And I've lived out here for a very long time, and I think public safety has always been supported. I feel like this was not an easy decision for any of the fees we're looking at, and it's hard. But to be fiscally responsible when you need to be is kind of what we owe our community as its representatives. And I think that we have an opportunity to keep things stable and stop the bleed. And if we don't do what is necessary now, like City Administrator Hank said, it gets to a point where it's not retrievable. And a lot of people in Coburg tell me they're supportive of our police department, but they don't feel we have a crime issue. And as Councilor Engebretson said at one meeting, that's because we have a police department. And having lived with public safety for the last 50 plus years, in my first marriage, I was like blue bloods at Sunday dinner. And then with Ray in fire, you learn a lot by being in the environment of a public safety person. And I think that when I think of us not having appropriate public safety out here, I often think if you would like to go into Armitage Park and walk to Winco right now by yourself, how would you feel about doing that? Because if we don't have adequate public safety here, it won't take long until what's around us enters and doesn't leave. And that was one of the things with the sheriff's office, even though it was extremely expensive, it's a reactive police presence. It is not preventive. It is not community oriented. And the other half of our public safety that we're very lucky we have is Coburg Fire. And fortunately for us, that doesn't come out of our city budget. They are a district. And when I looked at my tax bill, I pay approximately $500 a year to Coburg Fire for the levy and the operating expenses. And other than our tax dollars that go to the city, at this point, we haven't paid anything extra for public safety. So I think the community has always been supportive of that. And I have to tell you, without public safety, we wouldn't have a community. Coburg, that would be the biggest negative impact possible for the citizens of our community. We work to try to make the best decision possible and consider how hard it is for people to make it. Thank you. Comments, questions, discussion, council?
Well, just in terms of revenue, don't forget the diesel tax and the gas tax too.
Absolutely. You know, I think that
Those
is
are longer
one of the
term.
next on the docket. And we talked about, you know, one of the, I didn't hit on, one of the recommendations of the committee was to disband, you know, and close out the subcommittee after it's hit its one, you know, it's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I think the plan probably, and we'll probably revisit this after budget, is maybe forming, you know, another one with a different, you know, grouping of council, or maybe it's just a task force that just does targeted a few meetings and look at those. Cause I think that I concur. That one's a little more, you know, turn the dial on what we want to accomplish, how much capital, you know, how far behind we feel we are, how much we need to recoup. But that was talked about and really not dismissed, but really set aside to focus on this. But I think that's point well taken, and I think that can come back around when we look at what's the next grouping to kind of attack those issues.
And one requires a vote.
Correct.
Yes. Taxes require a vote. And if you, for those of us that recall, when we had the gas tax, the increase in gas tax, it failed the first time, was on the ballot. The second time it was on the ballot, each of us on council went out and actually knocked on doors and had a fact sheet and explained to our citizens why this was necessary and what the impact would be. And so the second time it passed overwhelmingly, but it does require time. We don't want to have a special ballot because that would cost us a lot of money. So we need to work disbanding this first subcommittee, and as Mr. Hank said, forming another task force or subcommittee to study the issues and move this forward so it can be on the next scheduled ballot, if that is the choice that is made. Councilor Bowman.
I have to say that I appreciate very much the work of the committee. I read your recommendations thoroughly, as much as they will affect the community. I have no choice but to agree with them, because you can't argue with math. That's what my math teacher used to say. The math will never lie. It just depends on whether you do it correctly. But it will never lie to you. But I want to recognize that it will impact the community, but I will do my part to communicate why, in my judgment and why, in my understanding, I believe that this is necessary. And Mayor Bell, I commend you for taking the first initial steps in that with the sip and chat. That's good to see. And I will certainly do all I can to further that. I will just say that I think the people of Coburg have done harder things in the past. I remember the recession very well. That was hard too. This will be hard, but sometimes you need to break a bone to put it back into place. And this is one of those things.
Hopefully we don't break any bones in this, but it is hard. You are absolutely correct, Counselor Bowman. Counselor Myers, any?
No, coming from a background of public safety, the comment that was made, well, we don't have any crime in Coburg. Well, that's because Chief Larson and our police force are doing a great job with the resources they do have. You know, from scheduling training with other departments. I mean, I look at it and they do need new fleet vehicles. We've all seen our police cars, and, you know, I came from larger agencies where they had a lot bigger budgets to work with. And so it's tough, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. And I support what our police agency does here in Coburg. It was one of the reasons why we moved to Coburg. Nothing against contracting with the sheriff's office, but it's a different type of policing. And so as we move forward, you know, hopefully we can inform the community and move forward with this. So good job on the subcommittee. I know it's tough having to add fees and bills, but I think it's something we're having to address now.
And we have time. We have time to work this through. For all questions of council to be answered, to really come back with a, what did we say, March? We will be bringing this back in January and February and March. So we've got time to really work this through.
Yeah. The goal really would be January, having a real firm, this is very helpful to kind of get that initial feedback to see what we can assemble to assist you in making your final decisions. You know, like I said, it requires an ordinance, just like the park and open space fee. It really replicates that. The tree fee, the methodology even of the tree fee, the park and open space fee, and the public safety fee would all have the same per unit, have a lot of the same language, and that's by design on purpose to have them administratively operate close to the same way. There's some nuances that we can talk about in January about you know, there's some, we talked about it a little bit, is kind of a nexus between, you know, a commercial account and a residential account, how much each of them are paying. Cities, that's probably where it varies some by city, is about what methodology is used. We so far have chosen a pretty straightforward, pretty conservative one that isn't as ripe for pushback in terms of, hey, one class of customer, commercial, is paying a huge amount, but they really don't use any more of this particular service, fill in the blank, whether it's tree or park or public safety, just because it's easier to fee them higher than residential. We have to be careful of that. And I think what's so far occurred here in Coburg is a fairly conservative methodology. I think it's very, very justifiable. That's a really nice feature of it. There are different ways that people are doing that. One city uses square footage. One city uses meter size as kind of a proxy for, you know, for impact and fee. You know, the issue here with public safety, if you have a 2-inch meter, you're likely a larger commercial industrial entity. Do you actually create more need for public safety than a single family residence? That would take some data, you know, and trending that, you know, that maybe yes, maybe no. The way we've set it up is equivalent units. It's different in a total revenue generation than could be done. So in January, we can talk about some of the if the what is somewhat established, the how would be the next thing we would talk about and get some fine tuning. Then that gives staff time between January and then March would be an actual ordinance, and we have to post that, a week in advance. So we have to develop that quite a bit in advance. So we'll probably need that February slot not to have it on an agenda so we can properly prepare it to come back for how you've given us more discrete, detailed feedback in January.
Is there
Uh,
any council, is there any information at this point that you would like staff to consider and bring back to us in the future? Anything specific that rises to your top of your heads?
Well, just in the terms of potential revenue improvement, we've talked about City Hall and possible relocation sale and what the impact of that would be.
Well, I'm talking specifically to the council revenue subcommittee. Any information that, and like Mr. Hanks was just saying, are you looking, would we look at differences between, water meters, or would you want any breakdown on that? Is there anything specific that you're thinking of at this point? And you don't have to think about it tonight, but bring it back at least in January.
Yeah, the conversation and kind of the default kind of thinking at this point is to have this fee be functionally similar to the other fees and how they're done. And like I said, it might limit right now the maximization of revenue of that, but I think it's a very prudent and justifiable way to do it. And but we can pursue other options. It gets a little more complicated to explain is one thing. That's not a deal killer. We can always find a way to explain other models, and we can do it. Pursue doing it some different ways. I've talked to a couple of the consultants, some cities that are starting one fresh and doing one that maybe is a little more elaborate in how it's constructed, have used consultants. I did talk with one of the consultants that's done work in Corvallis, Albany, and other cities that have similar fees. Just to get her take. I asked a question that she didn't have a definite answer for because I wanted to give you a sense of how many cities are using this tool generally, a fee on utility bills. My anecdotal sense in my city manager realm and world would be, as the mayor mentioned, we have 241 cities. I think 160 of them are under 5,000. Which is interesting. The majority are under I think the mean is 2,200. I think I have some stats that I'll put in the February next month's January city administration report on interesting population breakdowns that just came out. And the the idea that this is one of the few tools available is I think there are of the total of 241, I bet it's getting close to half. The consultant didn't have that exact number. She said, what I say when I go to council and present, when I'm talking about a public safety support fee or something similar, is dozens and dozens. It keeps it a little consultant vague. The point is that it is one of the few functional tools to do an incremental approach. An operating levy is much more of a swing for the fences. It gets you typically, because it's more involved to accomplish, takes more time to accomplish, it may get more revenue annually, but it's also every 5 years. It sunsets, and it's very hard to make, especially staffing, something that we're trying to fund that is predominantly staff driven. Very hard to bring people on and say, well, we don't know, in 3.5 years, whether or not the funds will be here to actually have that number of staff or that. So it has its pluses and has its minuses. And we talked about that. But I guess the point is that it is a very increasingly common tool, and to the point where some cities are are struggling with having 4, 5, 6 different types as just a menu of you have a fee for nearly every service. We will be coming back. I think I mentioned it after the stormwater master plan to talk about a stormwater maintenance fee. It is really from a transparency and a financial model. It's sort of what, in a way, weirdly, is what you want to do is you want to say you're paying this much for this particular service, you're paying this much for this. And so in that way it works. The problem is it's very transparent to show what each service costs. We can back it all up, but, and this gets into, the general fund historically has been this collection of services is paid for by this collection of revenues. And what I will bring back in January, is a reminder of the revenue streams that we have in the general fund. Property tax used to represent 75-80% of all cities' general fund. It's down at 50% for us, and that's pretty common now that the ratio of the property tax to the total revenue of a general fund keeps dwindling in comparison to the size of the fund. Franchise fees are pretty limited. Some go up. Many of them go down. Cord cutting, streaming, that changes franchise fees, that reduces cable franchises. Unfortunately, when electric and natural gas rates go up, as they've been going up in very quick succession, that does bring some revenue because our franchises are a percentage based of gross receipts within our boundary.
I don't, well, I hesitate to stop you because everything you're saying
Yep.
is absolutely required for us to understand. But I am looking at the
Yep.
time
Yeah.
and thinking we've got a few other things to get through.
Absolutely. I did get a little long. I was trying to prime the pump for any other data pieces. Right. Thank you I'll short circuit and say those were some examples of things I was planning to bring to January. And if there's anything else that helps frame the topic for really landing on the council's kind of detailed direction in January, let me know. Yeah.
Counselor Smith.
I think maybe some clarification for the methodology for per unit. I know what it looks like
Okay.
residentially, but what does it look like in our retail section
Okay.
and our industrial area?
Great.
I think if that question comes up, it would be nice to be able to explain that's why this is this way, whether it's by employer or however it's done. I'm not real clear on it myself, so that would be helpful.
Great. Will do.
Anything else from council?
I agree with that. If we already have it in place and we're already using it for other fees, not taking the time to reinvent the wheel, but using that same system and just so we can get some insight into what that breakup is.
Okay.
As opposed to trying something new, just so that we understand and we can explain that to those entities.
Good.
Whether it's a private business or a private citizen. I think that's what I would be interested in is kind of the end result of what we already have been using.
Okay. Great. Yep. That's excellent.
And also you mentioned the talking points for the gas tax. I think that not an attempt to constrict what we share with public, but it would be really helpful for me to have a bullet list of the talking points. So we're all kind of on the same page.
For this fee and this, yeah.
Particular issue.
I
Great.
think that it's important that we're all saying the same
Yeah,
thing.
and it would just be helpful.
Good. That's excellent feedback. Appreciate it. Yep. We'll
Anything
pull
else?
that together.
That sounds like a good direction for staff to
Yep.
at least start on this process and there will be more discussion to come. Okay. Moving along, then we're on, Mr. Hanks will provide the staff reports, all the administrative reports, and we'll bring staff up as needed. Utility rates review, the administrative report that is in your red folder, and the financial.
Yeah. So the city administration report, I'll kind of maybe take them out of order just to get through real quickly. And then maybe we finish with we'll take a financial break for like 2 minutes and then come back to finances with the utility rate. But the administration report, we talked about Loop Path, really stoked that that's done. And it's a great investment in the path, and it goes right along with the U of O team helping us kickstart some conversation.
And it was interesting that, they were bringing up, and you need more signs,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
need to extend these paths, and we
Yeah.
need more benches, and and I'm like going with the little calculator in
Yeah.
my head.
Well, and I think Counselor Smith hit it on the head. It's great to have an outside set of eyes to remind us of those things, right? And then put it down on paper. So it's a great kickstart for Park and Tree, and then ultimately you guys. So that's good. Probably the item of note in the administration report that really got us internally excited is Coleman and Pearl. That is the Collector Street Phase 1 project for that 2-block section. We did get crosswalk approval from Lane County. We did not get the flashing beacon approval. So we'll temper that a little, but that is a big win. The data was really on the bottom end. Branch Engineering did an excellent job of we had to submit a bunch of different survey information, data. They had to go stand there and count. They had to do, there were a lot of, we really were short of the minimum standard, but the package that we put together with the help of Branch, and then our team, Brian and Megan, helped augment it with the Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee recommendations that council endorsed. That went a long way. I think it was a little bit intangible. They have to go with data as data for engineers, but that other stuff matters. So we got that approval, and I was 50-50 on whether that would happen. So wanted to share that. It was super exciting for us when we got the email. And so that'll be built into the final details of Coleman Collector Project Phase 1. It'll go out to bid in January. It'll be in front of you in March for bid review and approval, construction in April. And it includes that crossing, which to me, really is a big building block to what I think, from the Transportation Safety Ad Hoc, and I think what council will continue wanting is slow traffic on at least the portion of Pearl from Coleman in to North Willamette. We can't do it right now. We don't meet the speed survey requirements. But I think this is a step that really leverages that. It could take 3-5 years to get speed reduction and beacons there, but I think we can get there. We couldn't get there, of course, if we don't have the crossing first. That also gives us better data because people will actually use it. So really excited to share that. And then along the same lines, I just added a little follow-up to Transportation Safety Ad Hoc. A shout out to a lot of the recommendations we have accomplished and continue to work on, and we'll refine and give reports on that. And I think the mayor's going to talk with or send a little message of thanks and reminder updates about what we have accomplished with their great work. So just wanted to hit that. The final one was just, I tend to love the energy strategy world in Oregon, and we happen to be kind of national leaders. So I added a little piece that Oregon Energy Strategy just came out, and wanted to give you a little heads up. And there's a link for all the details. It's not directly connected to what we do daily, but the solar at the wastewater plant and EV charging and some things that we do interact with, not in as direct a level as I've been involved with in other jurisdictions, but just wanted to share that. I thought it was a good anecdote, good little nugget.
But we're coming along.
We are.
Coburg is coming along.
Yeah.
I'm very proud.
In the financials, as Councilor Ingebretson said, that's the last one you'll see, looking wonky from the revenue side. For property taxes, we are receiving and have received a good bundle. We're processing those, doing our journal entries to record that. November and December is when those revenues come in. So when we look at the half year mark, in January, things will be kind of normalized out. So, but if there's any questions on there's nothing really super of note to me. There's some things that we're monitoring as a team, but nothing that's looking out of line from our perspective, but glad to answer questions. The final thing, and we can take as long or as short as we want, this was more of a prime the pump for future conversations, because unfortunately, alongside this general fund, public safety fee conversation is the typical, the usual annual discussion about utility rates. So what I included in the packet, I did a real brief staff report, but the packet has a PowerPoint from March of 23, and it from a consultant on water and sewer rate studies. And we touched on it a little bit at the last meeting, and
That's in,
oh, excuse
that's
me.
page 92, I believe, and I,
Yes.
93.
93 is where the PowerPoint starts. And this is FCS Group. They do lots of rate studies for lots of cities around the state and beyond, all up and down the West Coast. It gives just it can be homework just to review. It doesn't have to have a lot of discussion here. I think when we talk rates more specifically, I'll reference some of this, but the idea is, what are the components of utility rates? And the slide 94 on page 94, it's operating costs, capital costs, and I added debt service that wasn't on here, debt service. So the math equation, as Councillor Bowman said, is even more straightforward in utilities than it is in the general fund. We have some, we're now 2.5, 3 years on from this rate analysis, and there's some things that we've stayed on track with, and some things that that are different, and they have some impact in following explicitly the modeled rate increases over time versus what I think we're prudent to do. And the short story is, the modeling for the wastewater, for the sewer rates, only went out to 29, and so really didn't contemplate that I can see the closeout of the Urban Renewal Agency, and we've talked about that. So developing a plan with FCS about when's the right time to redo a rate model versus when do we take what's in here and then adjust based on current conditions of customer growth, resident growth being less than what the model predicted by a few percentage points. Sometimes that means you have to increase rates a little bit more because you have fewer customers than you thought you were going to have with the rates that they proposed. On the water side, we've gone slower on our capital projects, which means that we didn't have a need to raise the rates quite as substantially early to cover that, because we've spread that capital over time. So it actually has a little bit of a tampering effect on the need to be as aggressive as it's stated here. So we can probably tamp that down a little, shave a little bit of that off, but the sewer, we probably have to, increase with the knowledge that that's coming. And then with rates, I'll also be presenting kind of this 3 to 4 year plan, maybe a Gantt chart style, about how we need to probably use a consultant to help formally update the rate models. We don't want to update the water rate model until we have an updated master plan. So that means probably the water rates we'll work on kind of ourselves together for 3, maybe even 4 years until we have a completed master plan, because that will drive the rates, is knowing what our capital needs are in water. Sewer may want to, with your approval, do a rate study earlier, like next year or the year after, because we need to be prepared for and then probably advance increase rates to be prepared for not having the 400,000 or so a year that is historically come in from urban renewal. So this is just to prime the pump of how rates work and what was talked about and what was modeled in 2023 that we've generally followed, and the reasons that haven't exactly followed, I think, make sense. I think we're fine-ish. The acknowledgement really is that this assumed and expected annual rate increases in both, but different rates of increase. And that, will still be the continued staff position, is that there is a need to raise rates every year. Our costs rise in those every year, even without capital. And really this just describes, what goes into that, what assumptions. One other piece that I think is essential for both water and wastewater, but probably more for wastewater, is have them do a study, the element of equity across customer classifications. You know, is the commercial industrial customer base paying the right amount or right ratio of the total revenue, and does our model capture that properly? You know, it may or may not bear out that you know, you want to have your residential customers pay their appropriate share of both operations and maintenance and capital, but not more. You don't want the residential class to be paying for infrastructure requirements of the industrial class of customers. They'll pay some because they benefit some. So there's a both a science and an art to that, and that really requires a consultant. I would be hard pressed to internally be able to make anything that I'd be comfortable giving to you that to say, hey, our ratio is off between customer classes. That's part of a rate model. But I think there's value in that when we engage in with the firm to do it. So that was all I had for that one. Is just, but if there's any questions, just right off the get. But I'd also, you know, love to talk. I talked with Councilor Wells on a walk and talk, and we chatted about rates were one of the things, but we talked about capital. We just talked about a lot of things, and I you know, always am available to chat one-on-one with you on kind of background, what we're thinking, and what's going to show up in front of you, and kind of why we think it's going to come up when it should come up. So just have you all as prepared and understanding of these systems and what we bring forward as possible.
I think conversation and understanding is absolutely key for all of us on council, everyone in the community. We need to understand the whys. And then how we go about meeting the challenges is a whole other thing, but we need to understand the whys. Any input, questions, consideration? Any liaison updates? Pressing.
Nothing pressing. Parks Committee has started discussing the Coburg Creek ideas, the process for gathering information and looking at that. They are not doing work parties for November and December, but we'll resume in January. About between 40 and 50 hours of volunteer this year. So
Parks are looking terrific. The community just looks great. It doesn't matter who I talk to, they go, oh, you live in Coburg? Oh, I'd really like to live in Coburg. Well, you know, you can come on down.
It's a great place to live, and we want to keep it that way, for sure.
Are we on counselor comments now?
Yes, we can be. Liaison updates, counselor comments. Yes.
I just noticed that we had a rooster noise complaint on Pearl, and I just wondered, it said it was resolved. I wonder if the rooster still alive or not.
I didn't ask that question. I don't believe, I believe the rooster is still doing its thing, just not in that same location. Yeah, but I'm not positive.
There was
We talked to
something,
him.
That's right.
there was something that I did see that about a rehoming of a rooster.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It could be that one of those stories where you tell your kids, yeah, they went up to that farm. We really,
Yeah.
who knows if that actually happened or not.
It's just all the feathers on the street.
Anything else? Counselor Smith.
I have one comment about those streetlights. I think that the cost saving is important, but I think that the height of those lights and the brightness in the residential areas doesn't feel very appropriate. I know they shine down, but they're really bright for residential, maybe at intersections or our main thoroughfares, but I would like to see our residential lighting be more in tune with what is in our newer areas. They're extremely bright. I can see them 1 block away in my kitchen, so.
There's one particular that that will be adjusted on the end of Maple.
That may be
If
the
possible,
one.
it would be nice if we could adjust them all
It
down as far as possible unless they're at a major intersection, because for residential, I feel like.
It's,
they're really
you know, the short answer is it's unlikely. Those are what they are. Those, you know, if you look around, what we may be able to do over a longer period of time, there's no immediate, even the one that is being adjusted is going to be a bit. The challenge is we hear both sides of that. We hear people that like it and we hear people that don't. And I get the location matters. I don't know, and I'm not sure how much of us on staff know the exact history for how different ones became, you know, where they are.
Homeowner request was often. they
Probably,
wanted a lot
that's
of
a pretty common thing, and it could be a homeowner that's, you know, 5 homeowners ago, or it could be someone that's still there. It's really challenging. What ends up happening, you know, we sort of partnered with this because we ultimately pay the bills, and it's a fee plus usage, right? And it's, but it's on a different schedule than regular kilowatt hour retail. But it, you know, it's a challenge in every city. Pacific Power is, you know, that manages the set that we did. We have some that are city owned. We have some that EPUD manages, and we have some that Pacific Power manages. So we have a kind of a quilt around the services. It is unlikely without us bearing significant cost. Any alterations really are going to be borne by us if we push for them.
Placement on the pole, I think part of it is they're up so high.
There's some
And if they were
probably not. I can look. I can give you some feedback
So
from
there's a
Pacific Power.
specific
Just the
light
ones
that you're talking about.
It's like all of them, I didn't notice them
If,
before.
if you could, I think
to
what might be
kinda look.
helpful, yeah, is to cite
Specific ones.
specific locations.
It's a hornet's nest
Yeah.
of a topic, and
We'll see.
that doesn't mean we shouldn't approach it. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but it is because there are people that will say, "Excellent, you know, I now have, you know, my driveway is now lit, and
It
I
becomes a perception
Yeah,
issue.
right.
Yeah. which is hard.
Right, and there
Don't
it
we have
is.
to go to watch too.
It's challenging. The height is not necessarily even Pacific Power's flexibility. Those are federal standards typically about where on the pole relative to the telecom is lower, the power is here. You know, they're very limited on where they can be placed by PUC and by all the different regulations. So, but I'll find out. I'll get some more information. I'll feed you back what there is for options. I can say with relative certainty is any adjustments will cost us. And also I think will spur solving. It's like code enforcement. You solve one side and you make the other side upset. Typically you don't end up with 100, you're never 100%, but I can do some digging. I've had, what's worked is communication. I've had good communication. Now I don't get arm twisting working well, but you know, at least they feed back information to me about what's possible and what's not.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll bring something back.
Take a look at that
Yep.
too. Anything else for the good of the order? Well, if there's nothing else, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a wonderful holiday season. And we will adjourn this meeting at 7:54.